The signal came through on emergency frequencies across 17 star systems, bleeding through hyperspace channels with the desperate intensity of a dying star. It was raw, unfiltered panic transmitted in the universal distress protocols that every spacefaring civilization recognized, regardless of their political allegiances or territorial disputes. Commander Zara 6 of the Hegemony Border Defense Fleet received the transmission while conducting routine patrol sweeps near the contested Rigel sector. Her forearms moved across the holographic interface of her command chair, trying to filter out the static and electromagnetic interference that clouded the message. What came through made her pale green blood run cold. The transmission originated from the peaceful Kithara system, home to the scholarly Veltar species and their magnificent crystal cities. The Veltar were known throughout the galaxy as philosophers, researchers, and keepers of ancient knowledge. They had never engaged in warfare, preferring diplomacy and trade to resolve conflicts. Their defensive capabilities consisted of little more than planetary shield arrays designed to deflect asteroids and cosmic radiation. Status report, Zara 6 commanded, her translator device converting her clicks and chirps into standard galactic. Her tactical officer, a six-legged arachnid named Clegg, scuttled across the bridge to the sensor array. Commander, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the Kithara system. Whatever's happening there, it's big. Clegg's mandibles clicked nervously as data flowed across his screens. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. The energy patterns are aggressive. Zara 6 felt a chill that had nothing to do with the recycled air of her ship. She had served in the Border Defense Fleet for 3 decades, protecting trade routes and monitoring the galaxy's edge territories. She had seen pirate raids, territorial skirmishes, and resource wars, but never anything that could terrify an entire star system into broadcasting panic across the void. The transmission began to clear as her communications officer, a crystalline being named Hex, worked to clean up the signal. What they heard next changed everything. This is Elder Tomvar of the Kithara Council. We are under attack by an unknown force. They appeared without warning, ignoring all attempts at communication. Our defensive systems are failing. They're not taking prisoners. They're not demanding surrender. They're harvesting our people. The recording continued, punctuated by explosions and the sound of crystal structures collapsing. We've sent this message to all civilized worlds. To anyone who can hear this, please help us. They're moving through the system methodically, consuming everything in their path. This may be our final transmission. If anyone receives this, warn the galaxy. They're coming for everyone. Silence fell across the bridge as the transmission ended. Every member of the crew, representing 6 different species, stared at their instruments in shock. The Veltar were pacifists, but they weren't hysterical. If they were calling for help, the situation was genuinely catastrophic. Can we reach them? Zara 6 asked, though she already suspected the answer. Negative, Commander. The Kithara system has gone completely dark. No subspace communications, no hyperspace beacons. It's as if the entire system has been erased from the galactic network. Zara 6 made the decision that would echo through history. She ordered her fleet to relay the distress signal to the Galactic Council on Centris Prime, the political heart of civilized space. Within hours, the message had reached every major government, trade federation, and military alliance in known space. The response was immediate and coordinated. The hegemony mustered their battle fleets. The crystalline collective awakened their ancient war machines. The insectoid swarms prepared their planet-killer bioships. 36 civilizations that rarely agreed on anything suddenly found common ground in the face of an existential threat. But there was one transmission relay that caught the attention of beings most galactic citizens preferred to forget existed. On the edge of galactic civilization, in a star system that most navigation charts marked with warnings rather than welcome beacons, the signal reached a small monitoring station on a barren moon. The station was staffed by a single synthetic intelligence that had been programmed with one primary directive: watch for threats to humanity. The AI, designation Sentinel-7, analyzed the distress signal with cold efficiency. Within microseconds, it had cross-referenced the energy signatures mentioned in the Veltar transmission, with classified databases that contained information about the most dangerous threats in known space. What it found sent priority alerts through quantum channels to every human military command in the Sol system. Humans were relative newcomers to galactic civilization, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries earlier. but their rapid expansion and aggressive colonization had earned them a reputation that most galactic citizens found unsettling. They had emerged from a planet that the galactic scientific community classified as a Class 12 death world, a designation reserved for environments so hostile that most spacefaring species considered them uninhabitable. Earth was a world where the atmosphere itself was poisonous to most galactic life forms, where massive predators roamed freely, and where the dominant species had evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions that would kill most civilized beings within hours. Humans didn't just live on a death world, they had turned their entire existence into a competition with their environment, and they were winning. The galactic community had learned to coexist with humans through a combination of careful diplomacy and mutual profit. Human mercenaries were highly sought after for their effectiveness in extreme environments. Human technology, developed under the pressure of constant survival, often surpassed more advanced civilizations in terms of durability and adaptability. Human colonies were established on worlds that other species couldn't even visit without extensive life support. But most importantly, humans had never lost a war. Not once, in 200 years of galactic presence, had humanity been defeated in armed conflict. This wasn't due to superior technology or overwhelming numbers. It was because humans approached warfare with a mindset that other species found both incomprehensible and terrifying. Where other civilizations saw war as a necessary evil to be conducted with restraint and honor, humans saw war as a problem to be solved with maximum efficiency and minimal regard for conventional limitations. They didn't fight to achieve strategic objectives. They fought to completely eliminate threats to their species' survival. The message from Sentinel-7 reached Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force within minutes of the original Veltar transmission. Chen was reviewing deployment schedules for colonial defense when her aide burst into her office, holding a data tablet that was flashing priority alerts. "Admiral, we've got a Code 7 situation developing in the Kythara system," the aide reported, his voice tight with tension. Sentinel-7 has classified this as a potential extinction-level threat. Chen took the tablet and read the analysis. Her expression remained calm, but those who knew her well would have recognized the subtle tightening around her eyes that preceded her most dangerous decisions. Unknown hostiles, energy absorption capabilities, systematic harvesting of sentient life, she read aloud. Estimated threat level to human colonies, extreme. She looked up at her aide. "How many ships do we have in ready status?" "The 3rd, 7th, and 12th fleets are at full deployment readiness. The 5th fleet can be ready within 18 hours. Total available force, 437 ships of the line, plus support vessels and auxiliary craft." Chen considered this for a moment, then reached for her personal communication device. "Get me General Martinez at Colonial Command, Admiral Yoshida of the Pacific Fleet, and Director Hassan of Special Operations. Full priority channel. I want them here within the hour." As her aide rushed to comply, Chen returned her attention to the data from Sentinel-7. The AI had provided additional analysis that hadn't been included in the original galactic broadcast. The energy signatures described by the Veltar matched patterns associated with a threat that humanity had encountered before, during the early days of their expansion. 15 years earlier, a human mining colony in the Tau Ceti system had gone silent. When the rescue fleet arrived, they found the entire system stripped of life. Planets that had once supported thriving ecosystems were reduced to barren rock. The colonists were gone, as were all native life forms. The only evidence of what had happened was residual energy patterns that defied explanation. The official report had classified the incident as a natural disaster, possibly a rogue stellar phenomenon. But the classified addendum, known only to the highest levels of military command, told a different story. Scout ships had detected traces of artificial constructs in the system, massive structures that had since moved on to unknown destinations. The threat had been given a designation in human military databases, the Devourers. And now, they had returned. Chen's emergency conference convened exactly 1 hour after the initial alert. The holographic projections of 3 of humanity's most senior military leaders appeared around her conference table, their faces grim with the weight of the developing crisis. General Martinez spoke first, his scarred face reflecting decades of combat experience. "The galactic response is already underway. Every major military force is mobilizing to investigate the Kythara situation. Intelligence estimates at least 200 alien warships will be in the area within the next 72 hours. Admiral Yoshida nodded, her expression thoughtful. Standard galactic military doctrine would be to establish a perimeter, conduct reconnaissance, and attempt diplomatic contact before engaging. Given the nature of this threat, that approach is likely to result in significant losses. Director Hassan, whose cybernetic enhancements gleamed in the conference room lighting, accessed data streams directly through his neural interface. Our strategic analysis indicates that the galactic forces are approaching this as a conventional military threat. They're planning to fight a war against an enemy that doesn't follow conventional rules. Chen leaned back in her chair, studying the star charts displayed above the table. The Veltar transmission mentioned harvesting. Not conquest, not territorial expansion, but harvesting. That suggests we're not dealing with a political entity that can be negotiated with or deterred. We're dealing with a force that views sentient life as a resource to be consumed. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every person in the room understood what that meant for humanity's survival. If the Devourers were capable of consuming entire star systems, they represented an existential threat not just to individual colonies, but to the species as a whole. Recommendations? Chen asked. General Martinez was the first to respond. Full military deployment. Every available ship, every trained crew, every weapon system we can field. We treat this as if Earth itself is under direct attack. Agreed, Admiral Yoshida added. But we also need to consider the political implications. If we deploy our entire military force, the galactic community will view it as either a massive overreaction or a potential threat to their own security. Director Hassan's enhanced eyes flickered as he processed additional data streams. Perhaps that's the point. The galactic military approach assumes this can be resolved through conventional means. Our approach should demonstrate why that assumption is wrong. Chen made her decision with the calculated precision that had earned her command of humanity's defensive forces. We mobilize everything: 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th fleets, colonial marines, special operations, orbital strike command. If it can fight, it gets deployed to the Kithara system. Admiral, that's nearly 60% of our total military capacity, General Martinez warned. If this is a trap or a diversion, then we respond accordingly, Chen interrupted. But if this is what our analysis suggests it is, conventional military thinking won't be sufficient. We need to demonstrate to both the Devourers and the galactic community that humanity doesn't approach threats the same way they do. The deployment orders went out within minutes of the meeting's conclusion. Across human space, military bases erupted into controlled chaos as ships were provisioned, crews were recalled from leave, and weapon systems were brought online. The response was unlike anything the galaxy had seen from any single species in living memory. But humanity's military mobilization was only the beginning. The message from the Veltar had triggered protocols that went beyond simple military response. Humanity had learned, through 2 centuries of expansion and conflict, that survival required more than just superior firepower. It required the willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect the species, regardless of cost or consequence. As the human fleets prepared for deployment, classified research stations throughout human space began uploading files that hadn't been accessed since the early expansion period. Weapons that violated several galactic treaties, experimental technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science, and tactical doctrines that other species would consider war crimes. The galactic community was about to discover why humanity had never lost a war. It wasn't because they were better warriors than other species. It was because they understood something that more civilized races had forgotten. Sometimes, survival required becoming the monster that other monsters feared. The Devourers had sent their message by consuming the peaceful Veltar. Now, humanity was preparing to send their own message in response. And that message would be written in the language that the galaxy feared most: complete and total warfare, conducted without limit or restraint, until every threat to human survival was permanently eliminated. The die had been cast. The Deathworlders were coming to war. The journey to the Kithara system took 18 days through hyperspace, but the human fleet didn't travel alone. Admiral Chen's massive deployment had attracted attention from every major galactic power, creating an unprecedented convoy of alien warships that stretched across several light-years of twisted space-time. Captain Maya Okafor stood on the bridge of the UEDS Retribution, flagship of the human 7th Fleet. watching the tactical display that showed the positions of nearly 300 ships from 24 different species. It was the largest military gathering in galactic history, and she couldn't shake the feeling that it still wouldn't be enough. "Status report on our allies," she ordered, addressing her tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Park consulted his displays, frowning at the data. The hegemony has deployed their full border defense fleet, plus 3 battle groups from their home territories. The Crystalline Collective brought their Fortress-class dreadnoughts. The insectoid swarms have 6 bioships in formation, each one capable of planetary bombardment. "What about coordination protocols?" Captain Okafor asked. "That's more complicated," Park replied carefully. "Each species is operating under their own command structure. The Galactic Council has appointed Admiral Thexvar of the Hegemony as Supreme Commander, but the authority is largely ceremonial. Most of the alien fleets are planning to conduct independent operations." Captain Okafor nodded grimly. She had expected as much. Galactic military doctrine emphasized individual species autonomy, largely because the alternative unified command under a single authority reminded too many civilizations of the ancient empire wars that had devastated the galaxy millennia ago. The result was a military force with impressive firepower but questionable coordination. The human approach was different. Admiral Chen had established unified command protocols that placed all human forces under single-point control. Every ship, every marine unit, every support vessel responded to directives from the fleet flagship. It was a level of coordination that other species found unsettling, but which human military doctrine considered essential for effective warfare. "What's our ETA to the Kithara system?" Okafor asked. 14 hours, Captain. Scout ships are already conducting preliminary reconnaissance. The scout reports that came back over the next several hours painted a picture that defied conventional understanding. The Kithara system, once home to 4 inhabited planets and a thriving space-based infrastructure, was gone. Not destroyed, not conquered, but systematically consumed down to the molecular level. Commander Zara 6, whose original distress call had triggered the galactic response, received the scout reports aboard her flagship with growing horror. The beautiful crystal cities of Kithara Prime, which had taken the Veltar centuries to construct, were reduced to empty space. The planet itself remained, but its surface was now bare rock, stripped of all organic matter and most mineral resources. "How is this possible?" she whispered to her tactical staff. "Entire civilizations don't just vanish." Her science officer, a gaseous being named Vel Nash, projected holographic analysis of the energy readings. "The patterns suggest some form of matter conversion technology, but operating on a scale we've never encountered. Whatever did this didn't just destroy the Veltar infrastructure, it absorbed it." Similar reports came in from the other 3 planets in the system: mining stations, orbital habitats. Even the massive solar collection arrays that powered Veltar civilization had been consumed, leaving behind only trace energy signatures that defied analysis. But the most disturbing discovery came from the edge of the system, where long-range sensors detected artificial structures moving through space. The objects were enormous, each one larger than the biggest space stations in galactic civilization, and they pulsed with the same energy patterns that had been detected during the consumption of the Veltar worlds. The Devourers were still in the system. Admiral Thexvar called an emergency command conference as the galactic fleet approached the system's edge. Representatives from each major species gathered via holographic link to discuss strategy and coordination. The meeting quickly devolved into the kind of diplomatic complexity that had characterized galactic politics for centuries. "The Crystalline Collective proposes a cautious approach," announced General Kithix, his crystalline form refracting light across the conference space. "We establish a defensive perimeter and attempt communication with these entities before committing to military action." "Agreed," added Fleet Admiral Sorthak of the insectoid swarms. "Standard first contact protocols should be observed. We cannot assume hostile intent without attempting dialogue." Commander Zara 6 gestured with all 4 arms in frustration. The Veltar attempted communication. Their final transmissions specifically stated that the attackers ignored all diplomatic overtures. These entities consumed an entire peaceful civilization. Nevertheless, Admiral Thexvar interjected, "Galactic law requires that we exhaust diplomatic options before engaging in military action. We will establish a perimeter at the system's edge and broadcast universal greeting protocols on all frequencies. Admiral Chen's response came through a direct communication channel that bypassed the diplomatic niceties of the galactic command structure. Her face appeared on screens throughout the human fleet, her expression cold and focused. All human vessels, this is Admiral Chen. We have received intelligence indicating that the entities in the Kythera system represent an active threat to all sentient life. Our mission parameters are clear. Neutralize this threat by any means necessary. We will coordinate with galactic forces where possible, but we will not be constrained by their operational limitations. The human fleet broke formation from the Galactic Armada, accelerating toward the inner system with a speed and decisiveness that caught the alien commanders off guard. Captain Okafor felt the familiar tension that preceded combat as the Retribution's engines pushed the massive ship to maximum velocity. "Captain, we're receiving urgent communications from the Galactic Command," reported the communications officer. "Admiral Thexvar is demanding that we return to formation and comply with unified command protocols." "Acknowledged," Okafor replied. "Send our response." The United Earth Defense Force appreciates galactic cooperation, but operates under independent military authority when human colonies and citizens are at risk. The first contact with the Devourers came 12 hours later, as human scout ships encountered the massive structures moving through the outer asteroid belt. The contact was brief but devastating. The UEDS Pathfinder, a reconnaissance vessel with advanced stealth capabilities, managed to approach within visual range of one of the Devourer constructs before being detected. The images transmitted back to the fleet revealed something that challenged every assumption about warfare and civilization. The construct was not a ship in any conventional sense. It was a living entity, a massive organism that moved through space with biological propulsion systems. Its surface was covered with what appeared to be sensor organs, manipulator appendages, and feeding mechanisms that were actively processing asteroid material. Most horrifically, the hull showed clear evidence of incorporated technology from dozens of different species, including recognizable components from Veltar crystal engineering. The Pathfinder's final transmission came as the construct detected the human vessel. Instead of launching conventional weapons, the entity projected some form of energy field that began breaking down the ship's hull at the molecular level. The scout ship's crew managed to fire emergency beacons before their vessel was consumed, adding its mass and technology to the ever-growing Devourer organism. "Analysis complete," reported the chief science officer aboard the Retribution as the data was processed. "These entities don't use technology in any conventional sense. They are technology. Every ship they consume, every planet they strip, adds to their capabilities. They're essentially biological von Neumann machines with predatory intelligence." Captain Okafor studied the tactical display showing the positions of multiple Devourer constructs throughout the system. "How many are we looking at?" "Current count is 17 individual entities, ranging in size from small frigate equivalents to objects larger than space stations. Based on energy signatures, the largest one has been feeding for approximately 3 months. 3 months? Okafor felt a chill. That means they didn't just arrive when they attacked the Veltar. They were already here, already feeding, before the Kythera system went dark. The implications were staggering. The Devourers weren't raiders or conquerors acting on impulse. They were systematic predators who had planned their assault carefully, preparing to strip an entire star system of all useful resources. The Veltar distress call hadn't been sent during an initial attack. It had been transmitted during the final stages of a methodical consumption process that had taken months to complete. The Galactic Fleet's attempts at communication proved futile, just as the Veltar had warned. The Devourers showed no interest in dialogue, negotiation, or any form of conventional interaction. They simply continued their feeding process, treating the assembled warships as additional resources to be acquired when convenient. Admiral Thexvar's strategy committee debated response options for 8 hours while the Devourers continued to grow stronger. The various species representatives argued over rules of engagement, weapon selection, and target prioritization, with the kind of careful deliberation that characterized galactic military planning. The humans took a different approach. Admiral Chen's attack order was simple and direct. All vessels, engage the enemy. Primary objective is complete elimination of hostile entities. Secondary objective is prevention of Devourer expansion beyond this system. Tertiary objective is preservation of galactic fleet assets. No restrictions on weapon selection or engagement parameters. The human fleet advanced in perfect formation, their ships moving with the kind of coordinated precision that spoke to decades of unified command training. Unlike the galactic forces, which planned to engage individual devourer constructs with overwhelming firepower, the humans had identified a different tactical approach. Target analysis complete, reported Commander Park from his tactical station. The largest construct appears to be the central processing node for the swarm. If we can neutralize it, the smaller entities may lose coordination. Weapon status? Captain Okafor asked. All conventional systems ready. Antimatter torpedoes armed and targeted. Particle beam arrays charged to maximum output. Park paused, consulting additional displays. Captain, Admiral Chen has also authorized deployment of the Titangent-class warheads. Captain Okafor felt a moment of genuine surprise. The Titangent-class weapons were humanity's most closely guarded military secret, planet-killer weapons that violated several galactic treaties on weapons of mass destruction. Their existence was known only to the highest levels of human military command, and they had never been deployed in actual combat. Confirmed authorization? She asked. Direct from Admiral Chen, authenticated through quantum encryption. She's authorized use of any and all available weapon systems. The first human assault began with conventional weapons. Antimatter torpedoes and particle beams lanced across space toward the largest devourer construct, striking with energy outputs that should have been sufficient to cripple any conventional spacecraft. The attacks hit their targets with perfect accuracy, but the results were unlike anything in galactic military experience. Instead of being damaged, the devourer construct absorbed the energy from the human weapons, its biological hull glowing brighter as it processed the raw power into usable resources. The entity actually grew larger as it fed on the attack, adding mass and capability with each successful hit. Conventional weapons are ineffective, reported the weapons officer, his voice tight with frustration. The entity is using our attacks as a food source. Throughout the system, similar scenes played out as galactic forces engaged the smaller devourer entities. The alien warships possessed impressive firepower, but every attack only made their opponents stronger. The crystalline collective's energy weapons fed directly into devourer absorption systems. The insectoid bioships found their living projectiles incorporated into enemy organisms before they could detonate. It was a military disaster unfolding in real time, broadcast across emergency frequencies to every civilized world in the galaxy. The assembled might of dozens of civilizations was not only failing to defeat the devourers, it was actively helping them grow more powerful. Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays from her flagship, her expression unchanged as conventional warfare proved useless against an enemy that thrived on conflict. This was exactly what she had anticipated, and why she had authorized weapons that no galactic treaty maker had ever imagined would be needed. All vessels, implement Omega Protocol, she transmitted to the human fleet. T-Tangent-class weapons are authorized for immediate deployment. Target package is the primary construct. All other assets maintain defensive positions and prepare for secondary operations. The Titangent-class weapons had been developed during humanity's early expansion period, when Earth's military planners realized that their species might encounter threats that couldn't be defeated through conventional means. Unlike traditional weapons that relied on explosive force or energy projection, Titangent-class warheads were designed to attack the fundamental structure of matter itself. Each weapon contained a containment field housing a miniature black hole, artificially created and maintained through exotic matter manipulation. Upon detonation, the containment field collapsed, releasing a gravitational anomaly that didn't just destroy targets, it erased them from existence by pulling them beyond the event horizon of artificial singularities. The use of such weapons violated every principle of civilized warfare. They were indiscriminate, impossible to defend against, and capable of causing collateral damage on a cosmic scale. No galactic civilization had ever developed anything comparable, both because the technology was beyond most species' capabilities and because the implications were too horrific to contemplate. But humanity had learned long ago that survival sometimes required becoming the monster that other monsters feared. The Titangent-class torpedo launched from the human flagship with none of the dramatic energy displays associated with conventional weapons. It was a simple, dark cylinder that moved through space on conventional thrusters, giving no indication of the cosmic destruction contained within its hull. The largest devourer construct detected the approaching weapon and extended feeding tendrils toward it, preparing to absorb another energy source. The organism's biological processes had been perfected over countless encounters with conventional civilizations, allowing it to integrate any form of technology or energy into its ever-growing mass. But nothing in the Devourer's evolutionary experience had prepared it for a weapon that attacked existence itself. The detonation was silent, creating no explosion or energy release that could be detected by conventional sensors. Instead, space itself seemed to fold inward around the target, creating a spherical void that pulled matter, energy, and even light beyond the reach of physics. The massive Devourer construct, which had grown to the size of a small moon through months of feeding, simply ceased to exist. The effect on the remaining Devourer entities was immediate and dramatic. Without their central processing node, the smaller constructs lost coordination and began to turn on each other, their predatory instincts overriding any collaborative behavior. The systematic feeding operation collapsed into chaotic infighting as the biological entities competed for the limited resources remaining in the system. The Galactic Fleet commanders watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated why they had never lost a war. Where other species saw an unsolvable military problem, humans had simply escalated beyond the boundaries of conventional conflict until victory became inevitable. But the demonstration of human capability came with a cost that would echo through galactic politics for generations to come. Every alien commander who witnessed the deployment of weapons that could erase matter from existence was forced to reconsider their understanding of human military capacity and strategic thinking. Admiral Chen's final transmission to the Galactic Fleet was brief and professional. Threat has been neutralized. All remaining Devourer entities are engaging in self-destructive behavior and pose no immediate danger to galactic civilization. Human forces will remain in system until complete threat elimination is confirmed. The message left unsaid what every galactic commander understood. Humanity possessed weapons that could destroy entire star systems, and they were prepared to use them when their survival was threatened. The peaceful coexistence that had characterized human-galactic relations was about to become much more complicated. The cleanup operation in the Kithara system took 6 days, but the political fallout began within hours of the Titan weapon detonation. As human forces methodically hunted down and eliminated the remaining Devourer entities, emergency sessions convened on Centris Prime and a dozen other galactic capitals to address what many alien leaders were calling the human question. Admiral Chen maintained her fleet's position in the system's outer reaches, monitoring both the Devourer elimination and the increasingly frantic diplomatic communications flowing between galactic governments. Her tactical staff provided regular updates on both fronts, painting a picture of military success and political crisis. Status report on remaining hostiles, Chen requested from her command center aboard the flagship. Commander Singh consulted his displays, showing scattered energy signatures throughout the asteroid belt. 14 Devourer entities confirmed destroyed through conventional weapons after their coordination network collapsed. 3 remaining entities detected, but they're feeding on each other rather than continuing systematic consumption. Current threat assessment: minimal and decreasing. And the political situation? More complicated, Admiral. We're receiving formal diplomatic protests from 17 galactic governments regarding violation of weapons treaties. The Crystalline Collective has filed an emergency motion with the Galactic Council demanding immediate inspection of human military capabilities. 3 separate species have recalled their ambassadors from Earth. Chen nodded grimly. She had expected this reaction, but the alternative had been allowing the Devourers to continue their expansion until they consumed enough resources to become an unstoppable threat to the entire galaxy. Sometimes, effective leadership required making decisions that would be unpopular with those too comfortable to understand the necessity of harsh measures. What's the status of our galactic allies' forces? Mixed reactions, Admiral. The Hegemony Fleet has maintained formation and continues to assist with search and destroy operations. Several smaller species have withdrawn their ships and departed the system. The insectoid swarms are requesting detailed information about our weapon systems for mutual defense planning. The request from the insectoids was particularly significant. As one of the galaxy's most militarily sophisticated species, they understood better than most what humanity had demonstrated. The ability to deploy weapons that could erase matter from existence represented a fundamental shift in galactic power balance, and every military leader in known space was reassessing their strategic assumptions. Captain Okafor received similar reports from her tactical teams aboard the Retribution, as they continued patrol operations throughout the system. Her crew had adapted to the strange aftermath of the battle with characteristic human flexibility, but she could see the weight of what they had witnessed in their expressions. "Captain, we're getting unusual readings from the inner system," reported her science officer. "The planets that were stripped by the Devourers are showing signs of rapid atmospheric recovery." "Explain." "It appears that when the central Devourer entity was destroyed, its processing network released all the consumed organic matter back into the system. We're detecting massive clouds of organic compounds around each planet, beginning to settle into atmospheric layers." Captain Okoffer studied the data with growing amazement. "Are you saying the planets can be restored?" "The basic building blocks are there, Captain. It would take decades of terraforming work, but the Kithara worlds could potentially support life again. The organic matter from the Veltar civilization is still here, just redistributed." The discovery sent waves of excitement through the galactic fleet. What had been assumed to be a complete extinction event now appeared to be reversible, at least in part. The Veltar civilization was gone, their people consumed along with their cities, but their world could potentially live again. It was a small miracle in the midst of a military and political crisis, but the focus of galactic attention remained fixed on humanity's demonstration of previously unknown military capabilities. Emergency diplomatic channels carried increasingly urgent messages between alien governments as they struggled to understand the implications of what they had witnessed. Commander Zara 6 found herself in an unexpected position as liaison between the Galactic Command and the human fleet. Her four-armed physiology and diplomatic training made her one of the few alien officers capable of effective communication with human military personnel, and her role in the original distress call gave her credibility with both sides. "Admiral Chen," she transmitted from her flagship, "I've been asked to serve as intermediary for several concerns raised by the Galactic Council. They're requesting clarification about the nature of your weapons and their compliance with existing treaties." Chen's response was characteristically direct. "Commander, our weapons deployment was conducted under emergency authority to protect sentient life from extinction-level threat. All human military capabilities exist within the framework of our species' right to self-defense and defense of allied civilizations." "I understand, Admiral, but the concerns are more specific. The weapon you deployed appears to violate the Singularity Prohibition Treaty, which forbids the creation of artificial gravitational anomalies for military purposes." "Commander, humanity never signed the Singularity Prohibition Treaty. Our participation in galactic civilization has always been based on voluntary cooperation, not subjugation to laws created without our input or consent." The statement sent shockwaves through the galactic diplomatic community. Most species had assumed that human participation in galactic civilization implied acceptance of existing legal frameworks. The revelation that humanity considered itself bound only by agreements they had explicitly ratified called into question decades of assumptions about human intentions and limitations. Director Hassan monitored these diplomatic exchanges from his position aboard the human intelligence vessel Shadow Dancer, analyzing the flow of information and assessing potential galactic responses to humanity's demonstration of force. His cybernetic enhancements allowed him to process multiple communication streams simultaneously, providing real-time intelligence to Admiral Chen. "Admiral, we're seeing 3 distinct reaction patterns among galactic governments," he reported through secure channels. "Military planners are trying to assess our capabilities and develop countermeasures. Diplomatic corps are attempting to establish new frameworks for human integration that acknowledge our independent status. Political leaders are debating whether humanity represents a stabilizing force or an existential threat to galactic civilization." "And your assessment?" "The demonstration has achieved its primary objective. No galactic power will underestimate human military capability again. But it's also created secondary effects we need to manage carefully. Several species are discussing defensive alliances, specifically aimed at containing human expansion." The concern was well-founded. Throughout galactic history, species that demonstrated overwhelming military superiority had often found themselves isolated as other civilizations banded together in mutual defense. The ancient empire wars had begun when the hegemony's ancestors had grown too powerful for their neighbors to tolerate individually. But humanity's situation was different in several crucial ways. Unlike previous galactic powers, they had demonstrated their willingness to use extreme force in defense of other species, not just themselves. The Veltar had been pacifists with no strategic value to Earth, yet humanity had deployed their most devastating weapons to avenge their destruction. This suggested a different model of galactic leadership than the exploitative empires of the past. General Martinez coordinated the ground operations to clear remaining Devourer biological material from the asteroid belt, leading teams of colonial marines equipped with specialized containment gear. The work was dangerous and technically complex, requiring careful handling of alien biotechnology that could still be active even after the death of its host organisms. Status report on biological containment, Admiral Chen requested during her daily briefing. We've secured approximately 60% of the recoverable Devourer material, Martinez replied. The science teams are having a field day analyzing the biological mechanisms. Some of this technology could revolutionize our understanding of bioengineering and resource processing. Any immediate security concerns? Negative, Admiral. The biological components appear to be completely inert, without the central coordination network. We're treating them as hazardous material. But there's no sign of independent activity or reproduction. The recovered Devourer biotechnology represented an unexpected benefit from the military operation. Human scientists had never encountered biological systems capable of processing matter at the molecular level with such efficiency. The implications for manufacturing, mining, and terraforming were staggering. But the primary focus remained on managing the political crisis created by humanity's demonstration of weapons that violated every assumption about the limits of warfare. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council stretched for days as representatives struggled to develop frameworks for addressing humanity's unique position. Ambassador Elena Vasquez represented Earth's interests during these negotiations, working from the human embassy on Centris Prime, while maintaining constant communication with Admiral Chen's fleet. Her diplomatic experience had prepared her for complex negotiations, but the current situation was unprecedented in galactic history. The Council is proposing a new category of civilizational status, she reported to Earth's leadership during a secure transmission. They're calling it independent military authority, and suggesting it be applied to species with significant defensive capabilities who haven't fully integrated into existing legal frameworks. President Morrison considered this proposal from his office in Geneva, surrounded by advisors who were equally amazed by the military success and concerned about its diplomatic consequences. What would this status entail? Essentially, formal recognition that humanity operates under its own military doctrine while participating in galactic civilization as an independent entity. It would acknowledge our right to maintain and deploy whatever defensive capabilities we deem necessary, while establishing protocols for coordination during mutual threats. And the restrictions? That's where negotiations get complicated. Some species want mandatory disclosure of all human military capabilities. Others are demanding limits on deployment of weapons like the ones used against the Devourers. The insectoids are actually supporting our position, arguing that effective threat response requires operational flexibility. The insectoid position was particularly significant because their species had historically been one of the galaxy's most militarily conservative. Their support for human independence suggested that at least some galactic powers understood the necessity of maintaining defensive capabilities that exceeded treaty limitations. Captain Okafor observed these political developments while continuing to coordinate the systematic elimination of remaining Devourer entities. Her crew had become increasingly efficient at identifying and neutralizing the biological threats, developing tactics that turned humanity's adaptability into a decisive advantage. Final hostile eliminated, reported her tactical officer as the last Devourer entity was destroyed by conventional weapons. System is clear of all threats. The announcement was transmitted throughout the galactic fleet, marking the official end of combat operations. But for the human forces, the mission's success was measured by more than just threat elimination. They had demonstrated that humanity's approach to warfare, unlimited escalation in defense of survival, was not just effective but necessary when facing truly existential threats. Admiral Chen's final report to Earth Command summarized both the military and political outcomes of the operation. Mission objective achieved. Devourer threat eliminated with minimal casualties to Allied forces. Human military capabilities demonstrated effective against previously unknown threat type. Political complications with galactic community expected but manageable. The return journey to human space took place in an atmosphere of cautious celebration, mixed with strategic uncertainty. The human fleet had proven their military superiority beyond any doubt. But the long-term consequences of that demonstration remained unclear. Throughout the galaxy, Species that had previously viewed humans as aggressive but manageable neighbors were reassessing their strategic relationships. The revelation that Earth possessed weapons capable of erasing matter from existence changed every calculation about regional power balance and defensive planning. But perhaps more importantly, the successful defense of the Cathara system had established a new model for galactic crisis response. Where traditional diplomacy and conventional military force had failed, humanity's willingness to escalate beyond all limits had proven effective against a threat that could have consumed entire civilizations. The recovered organic matter from the destroyed devourers began the slow process of atmospheric reintegration around the stripped planets. Terraforming teams from a dozen species volunteered to assist in the restoration effort, viewing the project as a symbol of hope following the near-extinction event. The Cathara worlds would live again, even if their original inhabitants were gone forever. 6 months after the battle, Ambassador Vasquez successfully negotiated humanity's formal recognition as an independent military authority within galactic civilization. The agreement acknowledged Earth's right to maintain unlimited defensive capabilities while establishing communication protocols for future crisis response. The treaty was signed by representatives of 43 galactic civilizations, but 3 species refused to participate. 2 minor powers that considered human capabilities too dangerous to acknowledge, and the Crystalline Collective, whose leadership remained convinced that unlimited military escalation represented a fundamental threat to galactic stability. Admiral Chen received news of the diplomatic success while reviewing deployment schedules for the expanded Colonial Defense Force. Humanity's demonstration at Cathara had triggered a massive increase in defense spending and military recruitment, as Earth's government prepared for the possibility of facing other unknown threats. "The galaxy is learning what we've always known," she told her staff during a strategic planning meeting. "Sometimes, peace can only be maintained by those willing to fight wars that others consider unthinkable." The Cathara system was formally reopened to civilian traffic 1 year after the Devourer attack. The first ship to visit the restored system carried a memorial delegation from Earth, honoring the Veltar civilization that had died, calling for help and the galactic forces that had responded to their plea. But the memorial also served another purpose. It established a permanent monitoring station in the system, equipped with the most advanced sensors human technology could produce. The galaxy had learned that threats like the Devourers could appear without warning, and humanity intended to ensure that no distress call would ever go unanswered again. The monument erected on the restored surface of Cathara Prime carried inscriptions in 17 different galactic languages, but the message was simple and clear. To those who cry out in darkness, the Deathworlders will answer. It was both a promise and a warning, announcing to the galaxy that Earth would respond to any threat against sentient life with whatever force was necessary to ensure survival. The age of limited warfare and diplomatic restraint was over. Humanity had claimed their place as the galaxy's ultimate guardians, willing to become monsters so that others could remain civilized. The stars themselves had witnessed the price of calling for humanity's help, and they would never forget the response that came when aliens fired an SOS into the void.